Okay. There we go. Hi, everybody. Oh, that's why I'm like, I changed the thing, but why didn't it change? Because I was looking at the broadcast and not the actual producer window. Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday night. I hope that you all had fun on Zoom with Heather last night. It sounds like you did. I would have jumped on, but I was literally talked out. My mother was extremely chatty yesterday, plus talking to vendors. I literally, and then when I got home, I didn't tell you this, Heather, I wound up in an unintentional, like, 20-minute conversation with my neighbor. Because that's what happens when she's, present and sees me, and then it's 20 minutes. So, sorry to have abandoned y'all on Zoom last night, but trust me, I would not have been any fun anyway. It would have been the opposite of fun. I would have been grouchy and whiny and all kinds of unfun things. So, hope everyone's doing well wherever you are out there on the internets today. Tonight's project is a good stash buster project. This is what I'm calling mixed wire wrapped earrings. And so this project was literally me sitting in my office last week with COVID, going to myself, what project can you make with literally what is sitting scattered on your workbench? Because I didn't even have the energy to get up and go rifle through my bead boxes or anything. This was literally like, okay, what random debris is on this bench that I can turn into a pair of earrings? And so that's what I came up with. That's also why it took me so long to gather supplies, is I don't have a convenient, well, I mean, I've got actually lots of piles of random detritus, but none of them happen to be pretty. So I actually did some sort of intentional designing. We're going to see how this works out for me tonight. So let's talk tools and supplies for this evening's tutorial. All right, you're going to need some heavy gauge wire. So I've got some 16 gauge wire. That's going to be for making the loop. And I think I might hammer the loop tonight just for grinsies, since I have a hammer and bench block here and I couldn't find mine at home. They're under something, I don't know what. You're gonna need random bits of stuff, okay? And this is, like I said, it's a really good stash buster because, due to the fact that both of the earrings are kind of random and sort of busy, I mean, this is a really great project for like pairs of teardrops that don't match exactly, because once again, you put it with all of this other visual stuff, you really don't notice. Like if I put these two amethysts next to each other, they totally don't match. Like they're not even close to matching. But when you, again, when you put all this other stuff with them, oh dear, then I'm gonna throw it. And I'm going to make my own ear wires tonight, partially because we're out of gold-filled ear wires, and partially because the 16 gauge is just a little thick for my commercial ear wires. But like once you put all this stuff with it, it's, it's, unless you look real close, it's really hard to tell that the two amethysts don't match. So it's a really great project for those teardrops that you keep picking up to make earrings with, and you're like, oh, dang it, these don't match. What am I going to do with them? It's a great project for that. I've also gathered a bunch of random other little bits. I've got some of my little CZ quatrefoils, and I've got some little CZ, let's see, there. We've got some little CZ eye charms that are in there, and I've got some little CZ moons as well. So I've got, and then I've got teardrops, two different sizes, a big one and a small one. I've also got some center drilled beads that I'm going to try and incorporate into my design, because my whole concept behind this class was, techniques to put together random bits of stuff into a cohesive project. In addition to my 16 gauge wire, I'm going to need some thinner wires for wrapping my beads. So I've got 28 and 24 gauge in gold filled that I'm going to be working with tonight. I've also got a little bit of 20 gauge because, like I said, I am going to make my own ear wires, so 20 gauge is a good gauge for that. And then I've got some head pins, which I may or may not use, and also some jump rings in my little jarro lid of tricks here. As far as tools go, you don't need anything exotic. You're going to need your 3 basics. So that is going to be your chain nose pliers, and your round nose pliers and your wire cutters. And then you are going to need something around which to form your earring loop. So I'm going to use a ring mandrel for that. Okay, so I'm going to start by making my earring loops. So when I'm making my earring loops, I'm actually going to use the handle of the mandrel because that is the size that I want. When Yay! Hi, Dogsy. No worries. I barely have just gotten started, so y'all haven't missed much of anything except for me talking about supplies and the inspiration for this class coming from the fact that I was sick with COVID and literally decided to make a project with what was on my workbench because I didn't have strength to get up and find anything anywhere else in my office. So I'm going to use the handle here. Remember, when you're doing this, when you're making circles out of wire, your circle's going to wind up slightly bigger than whatever you're wrapping it around. So remember to choose something that's a little bit smaller than what you actually want for your earring. And I'm just going to go ahead and need those. So this is my 16 gauge wire. This is 16 gauge dead soft, which is typically what you'll get. Once you get above like 18 gauge, half hard ceases to be an option for most suppliers. So chances are if you're getting 16, it's going to be dead soft. Mine's gold filled, but you could absolutely do this in sterling silver, brass, bronze, copper, colored wire, craft wire. There's no soldering involved, so you know pretty much any wire that you have on hand is going to work for this. So I'm going to take my wire and I'm just going to take my ring mandrel, hold my wire firmly against my mandrel with my thumb, and just wrap around. And since I know that this is going to spring up, I'm going to wrap more times than I need. So I want 2 loops, but I'm wrapping around actually like 3.5 times because when I let go, it's going to get bigger. And I could even, if I wanted to, stretch these out and make them even a little bit bigger than they are right now. But I think this is a good size. It's slightly smaller than what I made before, but that's the cool thing about this type of project is you can alter the size depending on what you're feeling like. Do you want big ass earrings? Do you want medium ass earrings? Do you want little ass earrings? Take your pick. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start trimming my circles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just trim off this end bit that's kind of straight. That's where I was holding it with my thumb so it didn't get a really nice curve. And I used the flat side of my cutters. Remember, when you're using your wire cutters, this side, the side that's flat, cuts a flat edge. The side that's notched in cuts a pointy edge, okay? We don't want the pointy edge, we want the flat one. And then I'm going to make my second cut not even with this. So not even with this like I were making a jump ring. I'm actually going to bring it over a bit because I'm going to need that to make my loop. Now I'm going to have to get my cutters in there in between these 2 pieces of wire, and I want to cut with the flat side of my cutters towards what's going to be the end that stays. So now I've got a circle with 2 flat ends. You can see pretty obviously there, that's the pointy end. That's what I don't want. So we're going to go ahead and cut that off. And then once again, I'm going to cut this circle about there. And again, you want to make sure that the flush or flat side of your cutters is towards what's going to stay so that you wind up with 2 flush edges on your circle. And the rest of that can go back in its little wire home. And I just want to make sure that I did this so that they're the same, and I did. So you can measure this. You don't have to eyeball like I did, but you want this overlap to be the same on each earring. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. I'm pretty okay with it at the moment, but what I did to make my loop when I was at home is I didn't actually make a double loop. I didn't secure this end of the wire at all, and that does give you the potential for some problems with construction, specifically your beads falling off if you don't have that closed super tight. So I'm gonna see I have ideas. I have ideas about how to fix that problem, but what I didn't want was I didn't want a lot of bulk at the top of my earring, which is why I only made the loop with one and then just cut the other one off. And I'm still thinking that that's a valid way to do it, but what I think I need to do is take my hammer and flare this end out so that it's too big for my charms to come off of it. And that's something that I'm probably going to have to do after I put my charms on. So I'm actually be hammering this earring twice. Once before my charms and then once after to get that little flare at the end. Now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and I'm just going to pick one of these two, and they're both equally awkward, so it really doesn't matter which one you pick. And I'm going to take my pliers and I'm just going to roll back a loop. So what I'm doing is I'm just rotating that around my pliers. I've got my finger here, so I'm bracing against my finger, and I'm going to go all the way back until that loop is closed, okay? Until I can't see any light between those two pieces of wire. Like so. Alright, and for now I'm just going to keep this like it is. I may wind up cutting that off later. We'll see. Alright, so there's my one loop. Now my second one. So again, just take your pliers, get in there. We're trying to make the same size loop, so try and grab in the same spot on your pliers and just rotate that loop around until it's closed. Sometimes this happens. See how my loop got out of the plane of my earring? So I'm just going to take my chain nose, I'm going to bend it back. And then once again, just kind of manipulate this so that it stays closed. And then we do want to see, are they the same size? And they are close to the same size. I actually made this loop a little bit smaller than this one, but we're going to go with it. Okay, so now it's time to design. So let's see, what do I want to do? How do I want to put these earrings together with all my little bits and pieces? So I like length, which is why I grabbed my little quatrefoil connectors there, and I think I might hang my turquoise off of those. And then I might take do I have two round beads that match? That was something I wasn't thinking about. Okay, I've got two green garnet beads, so I think I'm going to use that to hang my little eye from. And then I can hang my lapis by itself. And my little moon, I think, can probably go on by itself as well. Okay, so that's the goal. That's the plan. So how do we accomplish this? So this is going to be a combination of basic wire wrap loops and top drilled wire wrapping. So I'm going to grab my 28 gauge. You could also use 26 gauge. It just depends on what fits through your beads. I know these little cushion or little coin cut guys have really tiny holes, so that's why I'm just starting out with 28 gauge. Okay, so I'm going to start with a basic wire wrap loop. Now, I need to make sure that my wire wrapped loop is big enough to slide easily on this wire, and I should actually do my hammering first. What I should have done was done my hammering before I put my design out on the table, because it's going to jump all around now, and I'm going to have to refigure it out, but that's okay. So, I have my bench block and my hammer, my chasing hammer, and it's going to get a little loud for a minute on the stream, so if you want to mute me, go ahead. I'm just going to take my frame, I'm going to set it on my bench block, and I'm going to hammer it with the flat side of my chasing hammer, trying my level best to not hammer my own fingers at the same time. So the reason it's important that I hammer before I put my charms on is your hammering is going to flatten your wire, which is actually going to change the size of loop that you need to make in order to make this project work. Also, you will notice that my circle has warped a little bit because of the hammering, so I'm going to take a moment to sort of gently move that back in place. So there's one, and this also came open, so I'm going to go ahead and just reclose that, which sometimes your chain nose pliers are the best tool for that, sometimes your round nose pliers are better. So I'm reclose that loop, and then I'm going to fix this one as well. Alright, so now we're back to, we got 2 hammered earrings, and so now I actually didn't screw up my design too badly, so happy about that. And when you hammer, you're going to get basically 2 different finishes. You're going to get more of kind of a shiny, kind of, you know, dinged up finish. Dinged up is not a good word, but with a little bit of texture to it on one side. The other side that was down on the bench block is going to be a little bit more matte. So you can decide which of those sides you want to be the front for your earring. But now I'm going to work on the wire wrapping for all of these components. I'm actually going to wire wrap them all first, and then I'm going to slide them onto my earring component that I made. So now I'm going to go back to my 28 gauge wire, and I'm going to start with this component right here. So what I'm going to do here is I want to take my center drilled little green garnet. I want to make a basic wire wrapped link with that, and I'm going to hang my little eye from the bottom. So I need to make sure when I make that top loop, once again, that I make it big enough to go over my hammered circle there. So I'm going to take my wire, and I'm actually going to start with nothing on my wire. So no bead, no nothing, just my wire and my round nose pliers. Take my round nose, and I'm going to hold them about 1 inch or so from the end of the wire. And once again, don't make the mistake of making that loop too tiny. I do that all the time because I like to make tiny loops for earrings and things, but then when I'm putting it on something larger like this, usually I make a tiny one and then go, oh crap. And then you have the decision of, do you just leave it and use a jump ring, or do you redo it? But the best thing is to do it right the first time, not have to make that decision at all. Alright, so I've got my wire in my pliers. I'm holding about 1 inch or so down from the end of my pliers, and push my wire away from me over my pliers at a 90-degree angle. Then I'm going to loosen my pliers, rotate them 1/8 of a turn, and grab again. So what I've done is I've grabbed right on that corner. Now I'm going to take the shorter wire, I'm going to pull it back up over the top of my pliers and down until it hits the other wire in front. You're not going to, you know, wow, that was a whole lot of words that tried to come out all at once that didn't work. What you want to do at this point is you want to start forming it around your pliers, so you're starting to make a circle. But you can't finish that circle because this part of your pliers is in the way. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen my pliers, rotate them 1/2 a turn, grab again, and what that's going to do is it's going to expose this little corner right here, and then I'm going to push my wire underneath my pliers and away from me, so that I make a 90-degree angle between these 2 pieces of wire, and that creates our lady with a scarf. So it's basically a loop that is ideally centered over this long piece of wire and has a wire crossing it at a 90-degree angle, and that is if we were to envision a lady in a convertible driving along on a beautiful fall day with a long scarf dramatically trailing out behind her. That's where that imagery comes from. But it's just really, this is a place a lot of times when you're wire wrapping that you need to do something, so it's helpful as an instructor and as a student, I feel, to have actually a term for this. Now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, I'm going to hold across that loop, so I want to make sure that I'm holding firmly across both sides of the, hi Corvus, why thank you. So I'm going to hold across the loops, make sure you're firmly holding both sides, but you want to make sure you can still see where those 2 wires are crossing, and then you're going to wrap this scarf wire around 2 or 3 times. Okay, you don't need to go crazy with the wire wrapping. You can if you want to, but then you're gonna have to leave yourself more wire. Notice when I'm doing this that I am pulling the wire around, and if you have trouble pulling with your fingers or your fingernails, you can always grab another pair of pliers and you can use that to grab your wire and pull. And I'm trying not to touch this core wire because I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to make it crooked. So I'm just moving these out of the frame so that so we have a little bit less visual confusion under the camera. So once I've done my 1.5 to 2 wraps, I'm going to put down my pliers. I'm going to grab a wire cutter and I'm going to just snip that wire as short as I can. Now when you do that, you can even see on the camera, you're going to have a little stabby bit that sticks out. We don't want to leave that sticking out because that's something that can snag. So I'm just going to hold that and use my chain nose to press that little stabby end down. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to string my little green garnet bead on there. And then I'm going to do same way I did witch earrings with the London topaz. I mean, I'm going to go with probably, because this is all basic wire wrapping techniques, but I don't completely remember which earrings those are, Corvus. Heather, do you have any idea?
I don't have any idea about anything anymore. I used to.
Okay.
It was cool back when I did.
Big.
Do you remember?
Oh, the ones I did for my
Swiss glue.
Huggies. The Swiss glues. Yeah. Yes. This is the same way. My lazy earrings. Exactly. Yes. So yes, but also no. So what I did, since those are hanging by themselves, I didn't link them on. I didn't link anything onto the bottom. So I did that same technique, but I did it on a head pin instead of doing a double loop like I'm going to do here. So for those earrings, I took a head pin through a bead. I should make some earrings out of these. These are pretty. I took a head pin through a bead and then did the technique I just did to do loop at the top. So as far as technique goes, what I'm about to do is going to be very similar to what you would do on a head pin. So I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to hold them so that they are touching the top of my bead, and I don't have to make a big loop on this because the only thing that's going to link onto it is this little component, and this little component has an open jump ring that comes as part of the component, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that off because I don't really need that extra ring. It's just going to add more kind of, you know, visual noise to the piece that I don't really want, and I can reuse that jump ring, so don't throw it away, because I'm going to reuse it to actually attach my little quatrefoil component to my earring. This one still has a sprue on it. Tiny little sprue. Okay, so now I'm going to take my pliers, I'm going to hold them so that they are touching the top of the bead, and I'm going to repeat that basic wire wrap loop procedure. So away, rotate, back up over the top, rotate, underneath to make the lady with the scarf. Now I'm going to link on my little CZI component. So I'm just going to take my wire, put it through the loop in that component, slide it all the way up, and just follow that wire and pop it into the loop, and then hold across your loop. And this part can get a little fiddly, so just make sure you're holding both halves of the loop and make sure you can still see the point where those two wires are crossing. And I'm going to take this wire, I'm going to wrap starting at the base of my loop, and I'm going to go all the way down till I hit my bead, like so. And then trim your wire off and press down your stabby end. There we go. So that's my little green component. Now I'm going to attach my turquoise onto this little double-ended quatrefoil component. This is a top-drilled wire wrap. So this is what I did on the pair of lazy earring drops that I'm wearing today. So that's this style of wire wrapping that you would do on a teardrop that has a hole through the point only, not vertically up and down through the entire stone. So the way that that works is we're going to start with our same 28 gauge wire. I'm going to go through my bead, and then I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to bend it up against the holes in my bead to make an X. And then I'm going to grab the long wire directly above that X and just bend it like so. So what I've done is I've put a little jog in the wire and straighten it up so that it's now aligned with the central axis of my teardrop. Now I'm going to wrap my short wire around the long wire 1.5 to 2 times. You definitely don't want to go crazy with the wire wrapping when you're doing a top drilled, because we're about to do a second wire wrap that's going to come down from the top and meet this. I'm going to go ahead and trim and press that down. Ta-da! Now we're going to do basic wire wrap loop. And this one I'm going to make tiny because I'm linking onto here, so it doesn't have to be very big. I'm going to go away, rotate, back up over the top, rotate underneath, like so, add it onto my quatrefoil, like so, and then once again, this part is very similar. We're just going to hold across the loop. If you can't hold just the loop, it's okay to hold the component as well. And then we're going to start wrapping at the base of the loop, and I'm going to wrap down till I meet the end of wire that's already there. Then I'm going to trim and press it down. So once again, you've got that pokey stabby bit. You just want to catch that with your pliers and give it a gentle squeeze. Okay, we're not trying to like squash the whole thing here. We just want to get that little end to lay down flat. Or not technically flat, to lay down in the same curvature as the rest of our coils. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that jump ring that I took off of my Evil Eye component, and I'm going to put that onto my little quatrefoil component, except Houston, we have a problem. It's a fixable problem, but here's the thing, is if I do this, oh no, never mind, Houston, we have no problem. I thought we had a problem, but we don't. So just ignore that whole last, 15 seconds of talking, and we're gonna go on now. Do another top drilled wire wrap on this lapis. And again, I have a pair of lapis here that don't really match, and that's going to be just fine. Alright, so we're going to make your triangle, grab with your pliers, bend up, grab the short one around the long one. Trim. Also, the shorter you trim, the easier that tucking in process is, so pay attention to that and your life will be a lot easier. Alright, and then basic wire wrap, and this is the one where I have to make sure it's big enough to go onto my 16 gauge wire. So again, away, rotate, back up over the top, rotate underneath. That's our lady with a scarf, and then we're going to wrap her. There we go. So that's could be neater, but we're gonna go with it for now. Alright, so that's all of my components, all my wire wrap components for this earring. So I've got my green garnet with my evil eye, my quatrefoil with my turquoise, and my lapis. So now I'm going to quickly, without so much explanation, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to make those 3 components for my second earring. So I'm going to go ahead and take this jump ring off, set it aside because I'm going to use that on top of my quatrefoil. I'm going to start by making a basic wire wrap loop. And I left myself practically no scarf wire there, so I'm definitely going to use another pair of pliers to help me pull that around. And I'm holding, the key to being able to do this with a skinny wire like a 28 gauge and not just bend it all to heck is I'm holding really firmly with my chain nose pliers here so that wire doesn't move, and I've got a sturdy base against which to pull. If you don't have that bracing of the wire, it's just gonna bend all to heck when you try and do your wrap. And I'm just gonna tuck my end down like so. Put on my green garnet, which I know has to have a hole somewhere. Alright, and then I'm going to do my second loop. This one doesn't necessarily need to be as large. And then I'm going to take that little CZ eye, I'm just going to slide that up and into my loop, and then hold across and wrap. Now normally on an earring it would be fairly important to get your number of wraps consistent so that your earrings would be the same length. Once again, there's so much going on in this earring, it doesn't so much matter. Okay, so there's that component. I need to cut myself just a skosh more wire. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the turquoise and the quatrefoil. This is a top row wire wrap, so we start by putting our wire through and bending it up. So while I'm doing this, we have a live merchandise sale coming up after this broadcast. It's going to start probably around 7:45. I have all kinds of 8-inch strands, all those strands that I didn't get around to showing on Wednesday. I'm going to try and get through all of those tonight. Plus, I went on a wee tiny baby shopping trip. Like just a little one, not a big one, but there are a couple of fun, cool new things that I can't wait to show you guys this evening. And the 8-inch strands are going to be new to you all as well. So it's going to be a whole fun night of new stuff. So don't forget to come back at 7:45 to participate in the sale. Maybe get yourself some shiny things, laugh at a few jokes, laugh at Heather and me being ridiculous. It's always guaranteed to be a fun time. I am going to try and keep the ridiculosity to a manageable amount though tonight, because I did go a bit off the rails on Wednesday. I'm at least further away from COVID now, so maybe I think I'm tired because it's been a long week, but I think I maybe still have a few more brain cells firing tonight than I did on Wednesday, because Wednesday was just a struggle.
Wednesday was a lot, but it's okay. We still love you.
Well, that's good. Because if everyone stopped loving me every time I had an off-the-rails stream, there would be nobody left.
Yes.
Ooh,
I mean, same as
Alright, so here's a thing, here's a problem that I need to solve. and that means I'm going to need to rewire up the other one, but I can do that pretty quickly. The hole in this bead is terrible. Look at that. It's not even through the middle of the bead, and it's not even through it, like it's only through like half the bead. So this is a really good opportunity to put a little hat on it, which means I'm going to have to go back and rewrap the other one with a little hat. But hat wraps are great for stabilizing when your hole is spectacularly crappy like this one is. So the main challenge here for starters is I do just need to make those couple 3 wire wraps. And they don't have to be super pretty, because in this instance we're going to wrap over them. We just need to make sure that that wire is secured through the hole, what little of it there is. And then I'm going to turn that off, tuck it in, then I'm going to do my basic wire wrap loop, and then I'm going to continue down over the stem to make the hat. Hopefully I left myself enough wire to do that. It might be a small hat. That's okay.
Put on head, hat.
Alright, so we're going to go away, rotate, back up. Remember, Allison, you need to make a bigger loop. Back up over the top, rotate underneath, and then we're going to hold across that loop nice and firmly. And make sure you're not holding where the wires cross, because if you hold the crossing point and press down, you're going to break your wires. Okay, so now I'm going to come down, and I'm going to start wrapping over my bead. And it's a bit tricky. You just want to kind of hold that in place and centered like the hole in the bead was actually good until you get a decent amount of wire over the point of your bead, and then it'll just kind of hold itself in place. But it's a little hairy, and then I'm just going to keep wrapping down over the point of the bead. It's a little hairy until you get it secured, and then I'm just gonna, to finish, I'm just gonna take my wire, bring it back up to the top here, and wrap it around. And you can just kind of meld it into the top of your hat. Alright, so there's that. I hope that's big enough. Oh good, it is. Okay, and then I'm just going to take a second, redo the other one, and then we're going to put these babies together, which apparently is cause for singing.
Yay, singing.
Thank you, Corvus. Corvus says I was entitled to some shenanigans on Wednesday.
That's
I appreciate
true.
that.
We just want to judiciously sprinkle shenanigans
Yes,
rather than fire hose them.
exactly.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna do, I'm redoing this one, and I'm just gonna put a hat on this one as well so that they match. Alright, so now I'm just gonna mix a little bit. Alright, so now I'm gonna hold across that loop with my pliers, my chain nose pliers. I'm gonna start wrapping down. This one's gonna be a little bit easier because the hole's not super wonky in this one, so as long as I can get my bead to just stay centered for just a second while I get a little bit of wire over the top of it. See, that was much easier than the wonky hold bead. You know, but once again, in terms of this being a good stash buster project, you know, it's a good thing to do with the wonky hold beads that you can't use on anything else.
Especially since you have so much misdirection going on in the earring.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay. Alright, so that's all my wire wrapped components. So now we're going to go ahead and thread them onto my earrings, and I should have made them opposing, but I didn't. We're just going to go ahead and say that's okay. So I like this texture, so I've decided that this is going to be the front of my earring, which means that this is actually going to go tuck behind. And I'm going to just thread my components on. Now, if you were not super violent with your head movements, wearing these earrings, you could actually use this as kind of an interchangeable earring design, where you would, make a series of dangles and, put them on and take them off as you wanted to. I'm going to make it more of a permanent design because I am going to try and do that little flare out at the end so that hopefully these don't come off. But I could see this being useful if you wanted to do something that was interchangeable. And the little moon is the last one. Alright, so that's my fun little earring design there. I'm just going to quickly assemble my second one. She says, whilst, "Hi, Sophia," being completely incapable of getting things on. Fantasme, thank you. Okay, so, alright, that's earring number 2. Except I put that one on backwards. Okay, and so now I'm going to try and just do what I was talking about at the beginning of the tutorial. I'm going to try and flare that end out so that my charms won't come off. So once again, it's about to get a little hammery in here, so if you want to turn down the volume, you can. Okay, so the idea here being that this paddle would theoretically be big enough that your charms wouldn't come off of it. I could have made my loop a little bit smaller, so if you're going to do that, I guess you have to kind of walk that line between, I actually kind of like that in front though, now that it's flared. You got to kind of walk that line between big enough to go on here, but small enough to be held on by that paddle. Okay, I actually kind of like that. Alright, I'm going to do the same with the other one. So again, hammering, commencing. Okay, and on this one, since my moon is on this side, it does do what I wanted it to do. And since I brought the other one to the front, I'm going to bring this one to the front. And then the very last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make some ear wires. Those are pretty cool looking. I know, right? Cover all the doggo's ears. We don't want to scare the doggos. We don't like to be a scary stream. So making your own ear wires is actually way simpler than one would think. It's extremely easy. All you need is some 20 gauge wire, some kind of an object to form your ear wires around. I'm just going to use a pen, and you're going to need a file or some sandpaper for the ends. If you're just doing basic ear wires, you can do that with about 2 to 2.5 inches of wire. 2.5 if you want to make them a little bit bigger, 2 if you want to make them more average size. I'm just going to cut myself 2.5 inch pieces of my 20 gauge wire. And now I want to make my loops on these a little bit bigger than my commercial ear wires because I was having issues with the ear wires binding up on the 16 gauge wire. So I'm just going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to grab at the end and I'm just going to roll that back. Don't stab yourself in the finger like I just did. I'm going to roll that back to make a loop. Then I'm going to take my pen, I'm going to bend it over my pen, and there you go. That's an ear wire. I'm going to trim it in a second, but I'm going to do the other one first so I can trim them at the same time. So again, take your round nose pliers, roll back. You want to make sure this loop is closed. Grab your pen, flip that over your pen, like so. There's your second ear wire. Oh boy, those don't match at all. That's closer. Alright, and then I'm just going to hold them together, and then I can cut both at the same time, straight across with the flat side of my cutters. I like to give the end of my ear wires a little upturn with my chain nose, which means I'm just going to grab and flip it up like so. And then the last thing you're going to do for your ear wires is you're just going to take your file and blunt down the end, because you don't want it to hurt when it goes through your ear. You can do this with a file, you can do this with sandpaper, whatever works best for you, whatever you happen to have near to hand is going to work to kind of blunt that down. Alright, and then we're going to take our chain nose, we're just going to twist that loop open, drop our earring component on here, making sure that the front of the earring component is the front of the ear wire. And then we're going to close that up. Make sure it's closed nice and tight so your earring component doesn't fall off your ear wire while you're wearing it. And then same here, open, drop that off, and close. And that's it! We did it! We did our mixed wire wrap earring project, and I think they turned out pretty nice. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us on the Beading Dreams stream this Saturday night. Don't forget, we will be coming back at you live in just 30 minutes with a live merchandise sale. Thanks, Ace. Here at twitch.tv/beadingdream. That's going to include new merchandise, including these bad boys. That's an amethyst crystal skull right there. So lots of cool stuff coming up for you on the Beading Dreams live sales stream. That's going to be starting right around 7:45 p.m. this evening. If you're not going to join us for the sale, thanks for joining us for the tutorial. And don't forget, you can find us on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream, 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. Plus Thursdays at noon with live merchandise sales every Wednesday and every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. I used to say this all the time, and I've been remiss in saying it lately. Yay! Awesome, Lori. We'll see you at the sale. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Thank you for supporting small businesses in general, and of course thank you for supporting this small business in particular. We really do appreciate it, and without all of you we could not do what we do, so much appreciation goes out to everyone. It's time for me to get off and get stuff prepared for the sale so I can get back on in a sort of timely fashion. So I'll see you all back on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream in half an hour. Bye y'all.